friends, I am OmnusI here in my lair, and today I have another RPGaDay video for you. Today is the 18th of August, and the topic word for today is meat. Now, meat can mean a few things, but primarily it means some sort of interaction, possibly for a lengthier period of time. For instance, if you meet somebody for the first time, it implies that you will still be seeing them after this one time. If you meet up with somebody for something, it means that there's an implied familiarity, and that this is just a social engagement between people who already know of each other. In this case, I wanted to talk about the social aspects and, of course, how it applies to my game, Dicefile. Now, I know there are people out there who absolutely hate having dice intercede when it comes to social interactions. There are people who think that it's one of the greatest things that have worked against role-playing games when you allow somebody to make a die roll for things like diplomacy or con or something like that, when a player can use their word parts. Their mouth parts can actually work and do the function of what the dice roll is, and that allows you to be immersed and play as your character. And to that I am somewhat sympathetic. There are some players who drastically do better and make for a much more entertaining experience than just a cold die roll. And this is true. However, I think such people are a little bit myopic when it comes to the greater range of players that are out there. There are people, I have some in my own gaming group, who are not comfortable with saying the things that their character would say. It is a burden to them. It takes away from their fun when they are asked to elaborate in character what their character is saying. And a lot of times when they do that, they just kind of, put in a half-hearted effort, just to get through it as quickly as possible, which isn't fair to the character, and it oftentimes can plow under a character who otherwise might be very effective at talking. And some people specifically make a character who has good social skills so they don't have to feel like they have to do the role-playing themselves. And for them, that is good and right. And I think that a game that eschews having statistics to support that kind of character is a disservice to some gamers. Now, I know some people just love their narrative stories and that, they should try for immersion as much as possible. But that's not every gamer's dream. And while it will be optional to take those things out of my game, every game master can put in the filter that they want. If they want to filter social interactions and make it more driven by the players role-playing things out, that's fine. Especially if it serves the cause of more fun for your players. I have had players that I have no problem getting rid of any social statistics, anything of that nature, because the players are more than up to being in character. But not all of them are. And I think that's important when you're considering a game design. So therefore, social interactions can work just like any other skill in my game. You can have social skills, and you can buttress up those social skills with other circumstances and even gear that can help you to role play with a little bit more rolling in a social situation. Now, clearly, if you don't like this kind of thing, then I understand. Fully well. I am also of the persuasion that optimally, I would love to have players who love the role play and just dove into it and never needed to roll for any social circumstance. As a matter of fact, I find a lot of game masters give you a shot and then make you roll, which a really good bout of role playing dampened by rolling a 1 sucks, quite honestly. And I honestly think if the role playing was good enough, you don't need the dice roll. But some people do that. But here's the thing, if you don't want to do that, then I have the rules for you. And it's not a crutch. I do tire a bit of people in the hobby who look down their nose at people who don't enjoy games the same way they do. Or they hold themselves up as being superior, having the superior experience because they don't. Gaming is about having the best experience you can, the most fun you can. And anything that's an impediment to that, I think is a disservice to the players who are going to be using your game, your product, or sitting at your table. If you feel that your way is superior and you don't want to hear anything else, and I've played with those DMs and one-shots at conventions and once or twice in a pickup game, it's a lesser experience than for that particular player. And yes, as a game master you could say, but if the players don't play the way I want, it's a lesser experience for me. Well, that's kind of the burden of the game master. You want to make sure everybody has left with as much fun as possible. And if that means you have to have slightly less fun at the expense of your players having more fun, I just think that's the right way to go. And again, my game mastering section, the Story Weavers section, it's my title for the game master, thank you. The Weaver section, and again, too, that also is a big part of the narrative of it. They are weaving together a story with the players. It's very much like the players are all providing the thread, and the Game Master is helping to weave and knit it together by deciding difficulty levels, deciding what checks are appropriate. That's the Game Master's trade. So, yeah, I'm going to have those elements in my game for those people who want to use them, with the express description that they're optional if the Game Master has players who are perfectly fine with the role-playing. I think one of the things that these professionally produced podcasts and Let's Plays of games is, one of the disservices is that they give an unfair expectation for Game Masters that they're going to have players who are going to constantly be piping up and wanting to add to the games. In my experience, that ain't the case. That isn't the case at all in most groups. There always seems to be a pecking order of people who are eager to jump in and start up the action, or to get in and get their teeth into a good role-playing role. There are going to be people who aren't comfortable with that. Maybe they're shy. Maybe they don't know any other way. But expecting to push them off the dock to learn how to swim, I don't know. So therefore, social rules. Yes, I will have social rules. There are some social skills. The primary one is influence. Generally, your force of will and how you connect to other people will be the default. Then after that, if you want to practice and develop skills with influence as the backing ability, you can do that. You can learn to con people or charm people, or all the different types of skills that are available. Fast talking. Sure. Any or all of them. It's up to you. Depends on the filter you want to use. And then if you want, there's gear that you can use. Let's face it, a little bit of makeup to make your appearance look a little bit better might be just the thing you need to cover from a really bad initial reaction. If you look attractive enough that a person is willing to forgive a faux pas, that could be, say, a four-sided die that you roll to protect you against rolling that critical one. If you get a professional grade and you happen to look really, ravishing, that might help too. You might have a trait where your character is considered beautiful for the standards of your society. That would also give a bonus for first-time appearances. Generally, after that, you get used to how a person looks, and then their personality starts to take over. I've got friends who told me about second and third dates where that very much applied, so I guess. But yeah, there are ways of getting your foot in the door with the right gear. The right clothes, for instance, can give you a gear bonus if you spend and get some, really appropriate clothes for the circumstance at hand. If you have the correct attire and you're trying to masquerade as a doctor, for instance, if you have a badge with the appropriate stuff on it, you have a lab coat, you have your mask, you have, whatever, or scrubs, you can walk around a hospital and people aren't going to look twice at you unless it's a really small hospital and everybody knows everybody. But in a large metropolitan hospital, you can get away with quite a bit doing something like that, I'd wager. Just saying. If you're going to have that kind of a con, that would be a big boost to conning people that you belong there. Or having the right costume would give a bonus to disguise if you're trying to look like somebody. If you have their clothes, boom. So, that's how gear and circumstance dice are going to work in the social field. If you are going to not strictly role-play those things out. But I'm perfectly fine with people bypassing that aspect, not rolling dice for social and letting players say everything they're going to say. I just think that it's important to have both. And honestly, again, in my system, that's relatively simple. Also, what makes that interesting, too, is that my system is also going to have a track for social combat. If you are having a circumstance where you are beating down on somebody's will, for instance, and it's not a clearly defined yes-no situation, there's basically going to be social fatigue that you can suffer, where you don't get to get back some of your spent dice. They're not true fatigue. They're not something that are required by rest. They're something that requires you to get out of that situation. But you will take the beatings and lumps that you take from, being boorish or, offending somebody all through that interaction with that person. And it might even get you a negative trait that person just doesn't like you afterwards. Certainly possible, especially if you try to intimidate people frequently. People don't like that, so... but that's my thoughts on meat and socialization in role-playing games. Again, I would have a blast if I had a table full of people that were in character all the time and just dying to get in and role-play with people and solving things in character as much as possible. That would be awesome, but it doesn't happen all the time. So... something to think about. Again, another call for diversity in the gaming industry, and recognizing that not everybody plays the same way you might, not everybody likes the same things you might in a role-playing venue, and there's lots of room for everybody. So, take this to heart. Thank you very much for joining me. I am Rob, and also OmnusI. I am OmnusI, here in my lair. Thank you again, and until next time, farewell.